Howdy folks, today we're going to head into the rugged mountains in the deep parts of Brazil. So we're heading to a Yuca Fest, or you might be able to call it a Manioc Fest, either one. So Manioc is something that I never heard of before coming to Brazil. And they use it for a lot of things, like sometimes bread, other things, but I'll talk about that later. So we're going to take a ride through a rugged, wild area, and we're going into sort of a box canyon called Serra da Cruz, or Serra da Cruz. And it's like saying Sierra of the Cross, I guess you could say that. Or, Sierra, Serra also means to saw. And that's where you get the word Sierra from. But like when we look at the Sierra in the United States, we get that from the Spanish, and it's talking about mountains. So we're going to head into these rugged areas here, and it's in a flat plain, but it's surrounded by these mountains. And what you can see is that there's obvious signs that there was a tremendous flood that covered the whole area, and as it washed out, it left sort of like the mud at the surface going between the mountains, and you can see that it levels off to the sea. And this area is not very high above sea level, so it's really fairly close to it, even though you go into the mountains. Now once you get past that area, you start going up in there, and it starts getting a little bit colder. So the area is going to be on a map in the description, so you can kind of look at it, look at the route and where we went. So I'm going to have that in there, and you can see what we did. Now we're going to drive through the area. We're going to see horses, other things. There are more people in there than usual. This is kind of like an ideal place to live. Good sort of country folk around there, nice people. It's not an impoverished place. People seem to be fairly well off that live in that area, and it's a good place to live. It's a good place. One of the things to take into consideration, there's no cell phone coverage there, and I think most of the people don't really want it either. And the way things are going nowadays, I mean, there's really no need for it. The only reason why we have it is probably because the government is sort of mandating that we have these cell phone chips in order to connect into cell phone towers, and that we really don't need anymore. So I went. Now last week's video was part of this one, so I added to this. And if you want to watch last week, it has another part of this route on there. And we went to a restaurant in the middle of the forest, and the restaurant was owned by a French guy, and it's in the middle of nowhere. And he has, like, one of the types of internet that they have there is sort of a antenna type internet, and it's not really too good, especially when it rains. The signal goes out. I lived out around that area too, so I kind of know what it's like. And sometimes there would be these heavy torrential rains that where I'm living right now, that it doesn't exist because the mountains sort of hold in that moisture, and there would be these torrential rains that would impact the signal coming into the antenna on the internet service. And this was years ago, so the rate was good for me, but I know it wouldn't be good enough for me now. And when I was out there, it was a clear day. You can see in last week's videos if you watch it, and we were trying to connect. So he told me that he's going to get the Elon Musk set up as soon as possible, which I'm thinking about moving out into an area like that too, and I will get the what is it? I can't remember the name. Skylink or the other one. I know I confuse it with the thing that they have in Terminator, but Starlink. I think Starlink, but it seems like a pretty good deal. One of the things that's, talking about that, one of the things that's interesting is that there are a lot of Brazilian Indians getting that. So the Brazilian Indians are not quite what they used to be. Most of them are driving around in four-wheel drive pickup trucks, and they still, they're definitely not the same, not the ones that you see. And usually, if you see something in a in a video or something, it's more like a show, and they're making money off of tourism. There's one video that I saw where they walked into a village that was empty, and what it was, they went there during during their break or during their off time, and nobody was there in the village. So they walked a little bit further, and there was like a regular town where they were living, dressed normal and everything. So that's one thing to think about when you're running around in those situations, and don't assume that there is still this going on. There is a little bit of it, but it's in very isolated areas. So you can find that they have some of these things going on. A friend of mine, he's a missionary down in reference to me, up in the Amazon. And he said he's trying to contact, I guess you would call it, I think they call them the Arrow people. I mean, that's sort of the title that they were given. And anyway, he's trying to get to those people. So they do exist, but there's very few of them. And so down here, talking about this area, going back to the rural area, there is some, you can run into some people that are sort of isolated, but not that much. However, they built a bridge going into the area about 50 years ago. And before then, it was really difficult to get there. So this area did not have electricity until about 50 years ago. And I lived at the place where we're going to end up in this video. I lived there. I lived in that town for maybe a year and a half or something. I can't remember exactly how long. About 10 years ago. And one of there was this lady there. I don't know if she's still alive, but she was around 110. But nobody knew exactly how old she was, because she did not have a birth certificate when she was born, so they don't know exactly what year she was born, and nobody was really into it at that time, into keeping track of that. They were just very rural people. And the other thing that I found interesting, because most of the people have not been eating industrialized food until recently. There were like 90-year-old guys riding around on bicycles around there, and they weren't like kind of creeping along like you might see somebody. They were riding fast and going around, cutting around corners like a teenager. And of course, they had been doing it all their life from a young age till then. Most of them probably did not have cars and didn't see the need for it, because some of them didn't really care about even leaving the area. It kind of reminds me, when I was a kid, I went to Russellville, Alabama, to see my family down there. And you'd go to the general store, which is something that they sort of had there. It's kind of a gas station. I don't even know if they had a supermarket there. They may have had one, but I'm sure they did. But I just remember we would stop at that place. It was probably somewhere that my dad liked to stop or something, but we would stop there and get some snacks or something. There'd always be these guys sitting on the front porch of this gas station or mini store or whatever. And I remember we would go and get a bottle of Coke, and you'd open the slide on the top and drop a nickel or whatever in, and pull out a bottle, and then open it with the bottle opener on the side. But you can see all the bottles down there, and you sort of pulled it up through this arm that would open up once you dropped the nickel or dime. I can't remember exactly what it was. It wasn't much anyway. So I remember gasoline being 25 cents a gallon, so I remember that. And this was, of course, before Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter ruined it for everybody, probably intentionally. So we're heading down this road here, and you can see that it's very rural through here, but it's beautiful country, beautiful countryside. Most of these guys here are farmers. There are a few neighborhoods running through here, but most of the people living to the left and to the right are farmers. There are a couple of hotels here, more like a bed and breakfast. So the French restaurant that we went to last week was a bed and breakfast, but they also have a restaurant too. Not a French restaurant, but the restaurant owned by a French guy. And it's a unique situation here. You can see these mountains that we're heading into. There's no way out, and you'll be able to see it on the map. But we're going into an area where there's no way out, and it's kind of nice. It's a nice thing to have an area where you don't have to worry about people traveling through to get from one place to another. You know that most of the people that come here, they're going to have a reason. So you're not going to have riffraff coming through or anything like that. I mean, all things are possible, but one thing you have to think about, that these guys live in this rural area, and whatever you hear about Brazil, it is what it is, but most of these people have guns down here in these areas. Whether it's legal or illegal, they have guns. And they protect their property. Most of the people who live in this area are very similar to Americans in rural areas. When I lived here, I was surprised at some of the similarities. But most of the people who live in this area are from Europe. Now, when you get into the towns, most of them are from all over the place. But most of these people are European. And here's a bus that they brought down here for people to go to the festival. So I guess they parked the bus there. Maybe they're going to go back and pick the people up. I'm not sure. Probably they left the people off there and then they turned around somewhere and came back and parked the bus. I'm not sure. Because it is a good stretch of legs from there to the Manioc Fest. So, but that rock up there is where it's at. So you can see we're getting close to it. And you'll be able to see that when we get in there. It's a really nice area, really, really beautiful. So a lot of the guys that are, another thing, we just saw somebody pass by on a motorcycle. Now, it's the law in Brazil to wear a helmet. But when you get off the main roads in Brazil, most people don't wear a helmet. You'll see everybody and their brother riding around without a helmet on. The only time you see that is when they're on the principal roads. The roads going into town, the main highways, places like that, because they're probably going to be a little bit stricter. However, when they're in these back roads and in neighborhoods, in their own neighborhood, they don't wear helmets. And so, in a way, there's I don't know, in some ways, I kind of like the way it is down in Brazil because you see people riding around with no helmets on. One of the things I like about it is the police, they don't stop you. They don't mess with you. The downside is they have traffic cameras everywhere in the cities. But by law, they have to put a sign up that warns you about the traffic cameras. So when I use Waze a lot, and Waze usually reports it, but it doesn't always report them. So you have to keep alert of them. I have not gotten a ticket yet. Not since I've lived here. I did get a couple of tickets about 20 years ago, less than 20 years ago. I drove through Brasilia, and I got 2 tickets on one trip. So you really have to watch it if you go to some of these places. But now they have to put a sign up. So if they don't put a sign up, you can beat it in court. Now we're here at the Manioc Festival. So you're gonna hear some people talking there too. So once we get to the talking, I'm going to sort of translate what they're saying. Try to anyway. I'm not really going to translate what they're saying. I'm sort of going to paraphrase what they're saying because I'm not good at translating. And I guess it's not, the term for it is not translating. It's actually I can't think of it right now. I usually refer to it as translating, but there's another term. And anyway, but this is the fest, the entrance right here. It's, to be honest, it's really not that big of a deal. A lot of people like to go here. I mean, think about it. They're celebrating a root that grows around, which is fine. I mean, it's nothing. They probably make a lot of money off of it, good farming and so forth. But it'd be like having a potato festival, something like that. It's a good thing. It's a good way to celebrate, kind of like when we celebrate Thanksgiving and the harvest and so forth. So that's, in reality, that's what they're doing, because you have to think about it. The seasons are inverted here. So this is winter time down here. It's basically midwinter, and the temperature, like right now, is around in the 70s, 60s and 70s. During the day, it's in the 70s. At night, it's in the 60s. So this place is a little bit warmer than usual, but not during this video. And so I'm going to listen and try to, you could sort of hear the woman in the background. What she's doing is inviting people to go to a challenge. There's a pole with about $500. It's about $300 worth of money in the top of the pole. So as you'll see when we get closer to it, there are a bunch of kids trying to climb up to it and get it. And I'm not sure how the contest works, but whoever can climb up that pole and grab the money, it's theirs. So I think it's about $300. And of course, $300 in Brazil is about 3 days' wages. Maybe for some people, 4 days' wages or 6 days' wages. So I think you have to pay. She's saying you can pay with something they have down here called Pix, which is pretty good system. Pretty much everybody has it, and I'm sure there's some stuff like that in the U.S. now. I know it's much more convenient than something like PayPal or other things. It's free, so you don't have to pay anything on it. But what you can do different ways is somebody gives you their phone number or their Brazilian social security number, something like that, and then you just punch it in there and send it, and it happens immediately. It's kind of like Zelle, but I think it's a little bit better than Zelle. you can show a barcode. Like if you have a business, you can have your barcode there. Like a lot of businesses have a barcode or a QR code, and you go over there and can't scan the QR code and look at it. So she's telling everybody it's to the right of the balcony, or not balcony, but the stage. And you heard her talking. She's got like a serious Brazilian hillbilly accent. For those of you that may have heard it before. But it's a little bit of karaoke hillbilly. So karaoke is the name that they assign to people from Rio. And there was this little girl, she kept trying and trying, but she never, I don't think she ever made it. She may have, but while she was doing it, there was this boy blowing bubbles on the pole. I don't know if it had much of a difference, but, you know, of course, that's soap, and that could have affected it as well, too. So as you can see, this place is really beautiful around here while we were driving through. So while we were driving through, you could see a lot of different types of palm trees. A lot of them were coconut. You could also see banana plants. I would not call it a banana tree. I used to think that it was, but I remember one time we were camping and we walked through this forest of bananas. Oh, well, it wasn't really a forest of bananas, it was a thick forest, and there were a few bananas. There was like a grove of banana trees in the middle of the forest. And the guy grabbed my machete. He said, you want a banana? I was like, sure. So he just went over there and he hacked the plant, the tree. I'm not sure what it is. I'll have to look it up. If anybody's a biologist, please put some remarks in there, or lives in the area. But he just hacked it one time, and it was just like a plant. There was no wood. It was just a regular plant, and hacked it off, and we grabbed a bunch of bananas. And there's nothing like fresh bananas. It's pretty good. And but the word banana, it comes from Portuguese, according to what I have seen when it talks about it. It could come from Spanish too, but there are a few words in English that come from Portuguese. So you have the manioc. It's a root in the ground, and that's another thing that goes around here. Now you also see a lot of cattle. One of the things that this region is known for is its cattle, and that's what you're going to see most of around here. Actually, in the state of Rio de Janeiro, the largest head of cattle are in this, or the most head of cattle are in this district, in this region. And all the cattle are grass-fed. I have never seen any kind of facility like they have in the U.S. where they have cows sitting in a barn. All the cows are grass-fed, and the beef is a little bit tougher than the U.S., but it's a lot better. It's a different taste. Maybe it's kind of like when you eat venison, you sort of have a little bit more of a wild taste. And that's kind of what it's like with the beef in Brazil. It's a little bit more of a wild taste. And I used to buy milk from the farmer. You can't really get milk in the supermarket down here. I think I don't think there's a lot of milk drinkers. And I think one reason why is because usually, genetically, people who are in the southern hemisphere, like, you know, especially people in Africa, warm places, are usually lactose intolerant. And it makes sense because if you think about it, you're not going to store milk for very long if you're in a hot area. And there's no need for milk either. You have plenty of other things that you can grow year round. However, if you live in Norway, Germany, some Nordic area, Northern Europe, people probably depended on milk a lot because if you have a cold winter and you can't plant anything, then you're going to have cows producing milk, eating hay, and that is a different situation. So milk is going to be something to add nutrients to you, along with the beef, probably eggs from chickens, things like that. And that's probably a reason why Northern Europeans may be, intolerant to eating a lot of bread, like the Southern Europeans might be. So I don't know. It's just some of the things that I've heard, and anyone want to chime in, feel free to. So this festival happens every year, and they make some things like cheese bread, which is really good. It's one of the things that Brazil's known for, especially in these rural areas. But it's like a ball of cheese. Well, what they do is they mix cheese with manioc and supposedly cheddar cheese, but I don't think, they call it cheddar down here. I don't really, it doesn't taste like cheddar. It just like yellow cheese. And I think that the people have sort of been duped by processed cheese. So it's one of the bad things about the dairy industry is really bad down here. You don't have a lot of freedom. I had to create a database for an industry, for the regulatory industry of the milk industry, and it's not a government organization, but they're connected to the government probably, but they're sort of a regulatory industry. I cannot remember what it's called, but it had several members that were all members of milk companies, and so they have to meet like every 2 or 3 years. I forgot what it is, but I had to set up a database for their conference one time, and so I think it's every 2 years. And it seems like a better situation to have private industries handling the regulations of milk, a regulatory agency like that. And it's a lot better than what goes on with Brazil with the milk. However, the milk that I do get in Brazil is usually much better than the milk in the United States, because when you do find milk, it's not homogenized and it has the fat in it. When I lived in this rural area that was close to where we're at right now, I would go to a local farm and buy milk from a farmer, and he would fill up like a 2-liter bottle, and I would take it home and drink it up. But that's the way it is. So I stayed at this fest for a short period. I just wanted to get a video just to show people what it's like down here. And you can see it. A lot of people showed up there, and I imagine that it's pretty good. I just had, I don't know, it's just not for me. Maybe I'm just not used to the culture. I don't know. I mean, I could probably hang out there for a while, but I don't know. Main purpose of this journey was to do a good trip and go to the restaurant owned by a French person too, the bed and breakfast, and try some of his cooking, or his wife's cooking anyway. So he owns it, but his wife does cooking, and it's sort of a farmer style of cooking. Really good food, very, very good, and I enjoyed it a lot. But you can see around here the scenery is beautiful, and there are probably more people in this spot right here than the population of people that live in this region that we're at. So, but it's nice. So leaving here, we're about to head out, and we're going to pass by those horses again on the way out too. So these people just didn't want to get out of the way. I guess they, I don't know. Maybe they're not used to cars. I'm not sure. It's sort of strange to me that they were walking around La La Land. But anyway, so cruising through this area, you can see it's a nice view going out. I think the view coming in was nice too. You're going to see two different perspectives, because coming in, you can see the sun over the horizon, and this is in the afternoon, but you cannot see the sun because of the mountains. The mountains are really tall. They might not look like it, but they're really tall, and it's really not that late. I think it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're going through here, and now heading back out. We're seeing it from a different perspective, but you can see some nice scenery going out to. Really beautiful, and it's actually a good place to probably buy some property. There are people sort of selling property around here, and I've definitely thought about it. I'm just sort of making some decisions what I want to do, because one problem for me moving out here is the access to technology, and I'm going to wait it out a little bit to see what happens. But I definitely will have to get Starlink and, not Skynet, get Starlink and connect to something out here. And another thing that I guess I would have to look into is, because a lot of times when I have, because these are things you don't really think about, but a lot of times when I have to do like a security check with certain apps that I have, they want to send a text message to your cell phone, and if I'm in a place like this, my cell phone is not going to be able to receive a text message, which for me, that's no problem. I don't mind being in a place where I cannot receive a message. It's perfectly fine. But no one ever sends me a message on my cell phone anyway. Here, no one sends text messages. It's always WhatsApp or some sort of messaging device like Signal or Telegram. And no one calls me on my phone. It seems like the only people that call me on my phone are telemarketers. Therefore, every time someone does call me, I pretty much ignore it. I might look at the number, maybe try to call somebody back, but probably because of that. So here are the horses, and these are most of these people are probably farmers and ranchers, probably cattle ranchers, which there are hundreds of horse riders around here. If you go back and look at an earlier video that I did, there were probably 100 horse riders going through this other area. Some of these guys may have been there too, I'm not sure. But they're obviously heading to the Yuca Festival, or Manioc Festival. So, good old boys down here, and very nice people. Everybody I've met down here, super nice. So to talk a little bit about the local culture, there are some places where I've been in Brazil, and you really cannot tell the difference between them and Americans in some places. Like one time I went to a barbecue, actually a fish fry. It was a fish fry. And I was looking around and I said, well, if there wasn't Brazilian music playing and people playing soccer, it would be just like the U.S. because just the way everybody looked. And here, kind of the same thing. Maybe you might see a couple of things that are a little bit different, but in reality, the majority of things are almost identical. They listen to a style of country music down here that I would say is mostly similar to German music. And one of the reasons is that most of the people that settle down here are German, especially when you go not too far away from here. About less than an hour away is this place called New Friburg. And New Friburg they call it Novo Friburgo down here, but New Friburg is a Swiss town, and most of the people down there in that town are from Switzerland. And there's a huge statue of William Tell there as well. So it's a good place to visit. And it was founded the place was founded July 29th, 1813. Now there was this German woman, she traveled there around the 1840s. And they had already had the street set up. It had like a really wide area, which I went to that place, and there were a few buildings on both sides of the road or the area there. And I would like to find some photographs of what it used to look like back then. But I plan to go there again, maybe within the next couple of weeks, and do some videos around there. But it's really nice, very rich history. They have a chocolate factory there, which was founded probably by Swiss people, and it's a very Germanic culture. Even around here, like my family's mostly Germanic and British side, or Scottish and Irish, and a little bit of French, and maybe about 50% Saxon. And when I'm around in this area, there's somebody walking around there. I have a doppelganger around here because everybody thinks I'm somebody else, and always confuse me with that person. So, and I don't know who it is. I've never met him. And usually they're surprised when they hear me talking, because then they hear my accent and they realize that I'm not that person. So this is heading kind of to the north, maybe northwest, and like I said, I'll put this on the map so you can kind of see where it went. This is the area heading into town. Stop here for a second to take a photograph and talk to somebody too. There was one time we had to stop. Somebody was asking directions, and they were saying, "Please tell me that it's not very far away," which it was still a good distance, depending on how far he had driven. But anyway, it is going both directions. It's a really nice view down through here. So one of the things about Novo Friburgo or New Freiburg, it was sort of a government incentive to encourage Europeans to settle here. Now, there are a lot of things related to Germanic culture around here, but it does have, if you go through the city today, you can see strong evidence in its architecture, cuisine, and cultural events that reflect the culture. But it is well known for its landscape, for beauty. A lot of people have been traveling to this place for a long time. There's another place called Teresopolis, and Teresopolis is close to Petropolis. Petropolis is is like where the king lived when Brazil had a king. And Teresópolis is colder climate. There's beer production there. They make a pretty good beer. And it's very German looking. So, and I've been through like some places with like rest stops driving through these mountains, and the rest stops, the signs are all in German. And you can go to areas in southern Brazil and different parts of Brazil where everybody speaks German. So there was an initiative to bring people down here. Now, if any of you ever look on a map and you see the city Americana, the reason why it's named that is because 60,000 Americans came to live in Brazil after the Civil War. And 30,000 went back, but it was a tremendous amount of people. So there they also have a festival, a Confederate festival every year. And it's one of the few places where you'll see the Confederate flag flying. And so a lot of those people are descendants of Confederates. And most of them do not speak English, but the ones who were like second generation, I don't think they're around anymore, but I did hear somebody talking on a video. She was a well-aged person, and she was the daughter of one of the settlers, and she spoke this old style of Southern English that I've only heard my grandmother speak. And my grandmother was born in the 1990s, or 1890s, I mean. So, very diverse, very, very interesting place. Now, this is the town called Trapiche that we're driving through right now. And this is where I lived. So, when we first came into it, that was close to where I lived. And it's a nice little town to live in. Peaceful, friendly, but people are very friendly there. But it's a small town too, so you always have the plus and the downside of living in a small town. One is that everybody here is related to each other, so you're never really going to be 100% part of the community. You're still going to be a little bit of an outsider. So it's something that you just have to expect and deal with. Like I lived in Farmville, North Carolina, and not the game on Facebook or whatever. I don't know if it still exists. I haven't been on Facebook in years. But I lived in that town too, a really small town. There were like 2,000 or 3,000 people, and it went from 5,000 to about 2,000. I think it was about 1,500 when I left. And the problem in a small town is, one, you have corrupt city council, and that's one of the problems with Farmville. You had a corrupt city council, and the mayor was honest at that time, but the city council was corrupt, and they passed laws that favored them and prevented other businesses from being involved in there. So they were always trying to cut deals with people outside of Farmville, but they didn't have the resources to do what people would need, because they tried to, this small group of people tried to control any possibility of anything coming into that town to help in it. While you go very nearby, Greenville, North Carolina, it had tremendous growth, and it was only 15 minutes away because it was obviously less corrupt and didn't deal with this small town mindset. But everybody in Farmville was related to each other, probably overly related to each other. And you had, you could see the genetics of the people, that there were some problems with some of the people around there. And like I had one neighbor, he was stealing my internet, my Wi-Fi, and he came up to me. He said, "Hey, if you want to get some good Wi-Fi, there's a signal here. It's g3pl.com, and that's what I set my Wi-Fi at." And I didn't expect anybody to steal my Wi-Fi, so I decided to set a password on it. And he never spoke to me again. But yeah, if he would have, because after I said, well, I think I might have mentioned that's my Wi-Fi. I don't know if I mentioned it was my Wi-Fi or not, but I don't know. I just thought it was a little bit strange. And then he was telling other people about it, so they're probably, he probably told the whole neighborhood to hack into my Wi-Fi and got around to me. I mean, sure, he was being nice to tell me about it, but I mean, still, if I have several people hacking into my Wi-Fi, it's going to reduce the quality of what I have. So I just put a password on it. And of course, this is back in the days when it was first coming out, and I think it's a good idea to have a password on it anyway. So, especially today. So this is another part, and I lived in this area. I never saw this part of town. This used to be the main road going into this area. So the bridge that we crossed, that just before we got onto this dirt road, that bridge used to not be there. And when it wasn't there, this place was isolated, except for this road that would go in there. And most of the places did not have electricity. Like right now, there's no cell phone coverage here, so anybody living here, they're without a cell phone. But a lot of people have Wi-Fi here. If you go to a shop or a restaurant, they usually have Wi-Fi, so you can connect to it. Everybody has Wi-Fi in their home or has some sort of internet in their home, but it's usually Wi-Fi. And now the interesting thing was that Yuca Fest, they had several people with, or they had some Wi-Fi there, they had Wi-Fi there. I don't know where they were getting the internet service from, but I didn't check it this time. But last year when I was there, I checked the speed of it, and it was fairly good for being out in a rural area. Now, another thing you see around here, a lot of dune buggies like that. You see a lot of these dune buggies. I think they call them boogaroos or something. But they're all over the place. So you see them. Like, I live near the beach. I live about, 500 meters, 500 yards from the beach. Down here they use metric. And one thing that you see a lot of around there are these dune buggies. And they're always cruising up and down the beach around here. I don't know if they can cruise on every beach, but the beach where I'm at, it heads into an area that's sort of like a state park or protected area. So they will go riding off in the beach and probably doing some fishing or crabbing or something like that, because I see people with equipment on their vehicle and nets, so they probably have a place where they go and get some fish. So this is a nice little town here. Now, if you looked at one of my videos in the past, you'll see a restaurant that I went to, and you can see a few horses that rode by, things like that. I did some short videos of horses riding by. You go back into that, and you can see some of these places, but we're about to cross past that restaurant anyway. So if anybody is ever in this area and you want to go to a very good restaurant, and it's also a bed and breakfast too. A lot of people have restaurants and bed and breakfast together because a lot of people like to travel through these areas. And it's just before this bridge, right to the right, and there's a river over here. So if you look at my other video, you'll see some of that. Some of my older videos, you'll see that I've gone through this area before, and there were some horses riding through as well. So it's not bad, not a bad area at all, and good and comfortable. So let's see, what else can I talk about here? So you go through some of these areas around here. It's, everybody thinks of Rio, the city of Rio, and the people around these areas are far from it. Most of these places are very safe. There's no crime or very low crime. You always have to be careful, because if you show that you're vulnerable, and consistently going through the same area, or possibly if you live somewhere where everybody can see you and they always see that you leave your front door open or something, you have to be careful. But I think, like most of these people, they probably do leave their doors open. They probably have no security whatsoever, and most of them have probably never been robbed. I mean, I lived here, never had a problem with anything, and there was, no one, people, it's sort of the custom for people to have walls around their house, but I don't know if it's, I think it's just a customary thing to have it, because it's just different from the U.S. But I have been to places where people do not have walls around their house, and you will see that sometimes, but usually everybody has a fence around it. But it's mostly, something, gates are not locked, things like that, so, or low fences. So I think it's just more for privacy. Maybe culturally, because Brazilians, they are very, they'll just come up and start talking to you. So maybe it's a way to keep your neighbors out and not bothering you all the time. Who knows? But I don't think they have a tremendous problem with security here. That it does exist. Like, for example, there's drugs are everywhere, and there was a guy that got addicted to crack that lived in this town, and he stole all the furniture from his family. They basically had to kick him out of the house, and he was just running up and down the streets. I don't know. He didn't have shoes. He was just running around like a crazy person. And one day, they found his skeleton in the forest somewhere. So, not sure. I never met the guy. I didn't know the guy. I never talked to him. And I would see him once in a while. So you do have those types of situations going around. And you definitely have to be careful with that too. But I know a nurse that lives here too, and she had a pistol. And it seems like the common practice for people to have weapons in their house in this area, but you might not see it in place. I don't know. I can't really say, but because of the way the laws are, if somebody has a weapon in Brazil, they're going to keep it a secret. They're not going to tell anybody about it. And I think she told me because she could trust me, I imagine, but she felt like she could anyway. So, if anybody wants to know who she is, you'll never find out. But nice, very nice lady. But this is heading out of town here, and pretty much coming towards the end here. Now, other things to talk about, like Brazil. There's some interesting things in the history, like Rio de Janeiro was the capital of Brazil at one point, and they moved it to Brasilia. And Brasilia became like the federal district, just like Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. So it's a federal district. It's like an area. But they moved theirs to the middle of the country to be protected, which in reality, that's probably a pretty good idea. Maybe they should. Hopefully, they'll never move Washington into Kansas, because it will ruin Kansas. But it's not in a state. It's sort of, there's like a district. If you look on the map in Brazil, you'll see a district that's sort of squared off, and it's on a high area. And what's interesting about Brasilia is that they went in there and just cleared the top of a mountain, leveled it, flattened it, and then they built the town. I mean, Washington was also made, was designed and built before they actually built anything there. So this is kind of what they did with Brasilia too. And at the time that they built Brasilia, they kind of thought that everybody would be driving cars, and there was no need for traffic lights and things like that. So they built. If you go to Brasilia, what's interesting is that there are no stop signs there. There's sort of like a traffic light in the middle of town. There's a few traffic lights here, but in the main part of the town, it is just like off ramps. So it is confusing. You can get lost there if you don't know the area because everything looks the same. But it's not bad. The traffic, I never saw any really bad traffic around there. And they just have to, it all kind of goes down into the middle, and I guess they have sort of a traffic like they have there. So here are these horse riders again. This video right now, it's from the first part of this when we were riding through, and you can see the horses from the rear. So this is sort of a side view of it, just so you can get a view. This is a side view of driving through this area, so you kind of see what we're seeing to the side, and not from the front view anymore. So what happened was I need to figure out, because I was using a GoPro for these side views, and the air conditioner in the car created some moisture on the lens. So I know there's some things that you could buy to absorb the moisture. So I'll need to get some of those maybe, or find some other method of doing this. So, but this is the older GoPro. Maybe if I get a newer GoPro, it'll probably be better. So, you can see there's some of these little farms around here. So a lot of these places that you'll see over to the side are places at the edge of cattle ranches. And what they do is they have ramps going up in the trucks. So that's one of the ways they move the cattle. Now, I'm not sure where they butcher them or how they butcher them. Like some guy, I think he was being a little bit of a smart ass, but he was telling me that before they butcher a cow, they'll play classical music and give them massages to get them to calm them down so the beef is softer. Because he was the butcher that I was going to when I was living out there. And one time I bought some beef. It was so hard. I talked about this before, but it was so hard I couldn't even chew it. I kept chewing it, and I finally had to throw it over the fence and gave it to my neighbor's dogs. But it was so tough, and that's what I was talking to him about. And he gave me this ridiculous story, but there are plenty of other butchers, so I didn't need to do this. So this video is a side video driving through the end of the video that you saw before we started seeing the horses. This is kind of going through that extended road that used to be the main road, and then we're going to drive back through the town. You'll recognize some things, and one thing's too, like when we come around this curve after we get on the asphalt, you can see to the side that restaurant again is good, and you can see the creek down below. And so down in that valley, there's a creek that goes through there. It's a nice little creek to go swimming and stuff. It's not really deep or anything, but it's deep enough to dip in and wait do something, get wet, and it's good. So Rio is one of the main places now. It is known for political corruption. That's one of the problems with Rio. And it seems like every time they have a mayor, he always gets arrested. So coming into town right here, and And it's a nice little town here. People are pretty friendly, but you'll be able to see that restaurant in just a second here. And there's the restaurant, and there's the creek. And if you see my other videos, you can get a reference to where we're at. And so as I said, if you look at the description, you'll see most of this. You'll see the link. So, one last thing to say about Macaé, it is the capital of the petroleum industry. So a lot of people come here to work in the petroleum industry, and it is well known for that. It used to be like a small fishing village, and when they discovered petroleum, everybody started coming here and town grew from nothing. So, like maybe less than 10% of the population is originally from the city area. Now this area, maybe 50% here, because a lot of people didn't move up to this area. But when you go to Macaé, it's sort of a boom town from petroleum. So when you go through Macaé, like where I live, if I go one way, there are petroleum companies. If I go the other way, there are cattle ranches. So it's the way it is. So I'm like on the edge, sort of on the edge of town, and it's a good area. So you get out to these areas, a lot of these people go into town to work, and I guess that's the end of the video. But take care, and I wish you the best. So thanks for watching, and have a good, whatever time it is for you. Have a great one, and God bless. Thanks. Take care. And if you like this video, give me a like, share it with a friend, and leave a comment. Tell me what you thought. I would definitely like to know what you thought about it. So, bye-bye.